Welcome to Eye on Foxborough. I'm Karen Guregian, and today I'm pleased to welcome former Patriots quarterback Matt Cassel. Matt's been busy. He's been working the past couple years as an NBC college football analyst. He just put out a new podcast called Lots to Stay with Bobby Bones. And we love having him on because he was coached by Josh McDaniels. He played he played with Mike Vrabel, and Mike Vrabel kind of let him go in Tennessee. So he might have some interesting things to say. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing great, Karen. How are you?
I am doing awesome, awesome, awesome. When you saw that the Patriots hired Mike for the job, what were your initial thoughts, other than it's a mistake?
No, I didn't think that. I think it was a great hire. Obviously, Mike, with his relationship with the Kraft family, being a tremendous player there in the Patriots Hall of Fame, and then also a guy that has established himself and has a reputation as a head coach for being able to get it done. You saw what he did with the Tennessee program here for the Tennessee Titans. And then they obviously moved on from him, but I knew that it was just a buffer period. He was going to wait about a year or so before the right opportunity came up. And when this opportunity came up, it just felt right to bring somebody in, like I said, that's established, that can create that winning culture, and somebody that the ownership and everybody is very familiar with. I think it was a tremendous hire by the Kraft family.
You played with him
I
uh,
did.
as a Patriot. You were quarterback. He was on the defensive side. You played with him in Kansas City too,
I
because
did. We were training
same as
together in
Dino.
Kansas City.
That's
That's
right.
exactly right.
Did you take the plane out together to Kansas City?
No, I think I was on a plane pretty soon thereafter. I think he came out probably a day or so after I did. I don't know if he is as excited as getting traded as I was, just because I knew it was still going to be an opportunity for me to go extend my career and actually play versus coming back to the New England Patriots, where I knew Tom was inevitably going to come back. So
Mhm.
he was at the tail end of his career. He got stuck with me as a neighbor in Kansas City. We lived right down the street from each other. So it was actually great to have him there with me as I made that transition to this new organization, because he's such a tremendous leader, a veteran presence, a guy that I could, go up and talk to about anything going on. And so I was very fortunate to have Mike come with me, and obviously a guy that I have a great friendship with as well.
Did you get a sense when you talk about that leadership that, he was going to be a coach at the next level, or that he had aspirations to be a coach in the NFL?
100%. I think anybody that knows Mike Vrabel and any ex-player that you talk to that played as a teammate with Mike Vrabel would tell you everybody envisioned him going into coaching, because when you saw him on the field, his instincts were one thing, but his knowledge of the game, he was the guy that would get everybody set up, and he was making the calls and making the adjustments. And even his passion and love for football always stood out, because he was a starter, obviously, on the defensive side of the ball. And usually when the ones go in practice, then during the offensive side of the practice, when we're running our plays, you have a scout team. Well, Mike Vrabel, being a starting outside linebacker on this team, would come out on scout team and play safety, just because he was so competitive. He wanted to pick off Brady. He wanted to pick off anybody. He's yelling out at people, and he'd piss off the offensive coaches all the time, because on the scout team, a lot of times they want you to run a certain thing. They don't want you to jump certain routes. They want to give clean looks to make you, build some confidence for the offense. Well, Mike would just do whatever he wanted. He'd be changing stuff. He'd be jumping routes and then just talking smack the entire time. So you always knew that Mike loved the game. He could coach the game at a high level. And we used to call him Coach Rabes, because we knew that eventually that was his path.
Did you, obviously he played tight end on occasion. Did you get to throw him any
Oh
passes in
yes, I
tournament?
threw him some. I threw him
Touch,
some
must have
touchdowns.
been a touchdown, right?
100%. Hey, if Mike's in the game, it's definitely only in goal line situations. And that was always the other thing that I appreciated about him, was that he would be itching to get in there on goal line, and he'd come down and practice our goal line practices. I mean, plays on Fridays, but he wanted to get really good because he knew this was his opportunity. And I think he's got like 15, 16 touchdowns or something like that in his career. But I definitely had the honor of throwing him a few myself.
Well, that's awesome. How was it? it- I'm told, I mean, obviously I was there during that time. I
Right.
go far back, but the stories are that he was the only one who could get away with talking smack to Belichick. Is that true?
I'd say that's a fair assessment of the situation, especially when I was a young guy. I came in and you had such a tremendous veteran presence with Willie McGinnis, Rodney Harrison, Richard Seymour, Matt White. You could go up and down, Teddy Bruschi. I mean, especially on that defensive side of the ball, they were all really established veterans. But Mike was the only one that in a meeting would be able to pop off from the back of the room and say a joke and everybody laugh and Bill give him something back, but still accepted it. It wasn't like get the F out of here, like you would typically get if a player spoke out. But I think Bill had enough respect for him and understood that's just how Vrabel operates. It's black or white. There's no gray area for Vrabel. So he will say what he feels, and that's what I always respect about him as well. Is he's one of those guys that's authentic. He's genuine. You might not always like what you're going to hear, but at the same time, you understand where you are in terms of his eyes.
Can you see that working well with as a coach with players, that kind of demeanor? I mean, I know he's tough,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also, he engages in that kind of smack talk with the players
Right.
even as a coach. But, we've gone through cycles of different types of players, and the
Right.
tough guys can't get through to the entitled guys now. But I still think Mike works in this environment. Would you
I do.
agree?
I would agree with that wholeheartedly, and the reason is Mike understands the dynamics of the locker room. He was there and played at a high level for 12, 13 years, whatever it was, and then he's been under Urban Meyer. He's been with Billy O'Brien in Houston. Then he also was the head coach in the Tennessee Titans, and through that, you get more and more experience. But I know firsthand with a bunch of my buddies that were still on the team with the Tennessee Titans, they love playing for him. Now, he's going to hold you accountable. He's going to make sure that you do your job. He's going to play the best guys that give them an opportunity to win. But that's what you have to do as a head coach, or you lose control of your team. And then, second, he's also relatable. He's going to go out there. You're going to hear the banter. You're going to hear some smack, some talking smack to different players. But that brings camaraderie. That allows them to respect you and also know that you're on the same level. But when he knows when he needs a push, he knows when he needs to pull off. And so, because of his background as a player and then as a coach, I think that all those dynamics come into play when you become a leader of a football team.
Hmm. Let's move to Josh McDaniels, your offensive coordinator in New England. Tom went down in 2008, first game, and then you're thrust into the starting role. Um, how did, how did Josh ease that time frame for you, or kind of did he do things to the offense that made it, say, more Matt Cassel friendly, or did he just kind of expect you to, take over the Tom Brady offense?
Yeah, it's always a question that has been asked a lot over the years. And I think Josh McDaniels is one of the best coordinators that you have in the NFL and has been for a long time. And I give a lot of credit for that season based on the preparation throughout my first 3 seasons there. Because a big component of being a really good coach is the teaching and development aspect. And so for Josh McDaniels, he was a teacher first and foremost. He understood defense. And then even in the offseason in my younger years and throughout my time there, we'd go and he'd set up tape and film for identification of Mike and protection schemes that we had. We'd go out on the field and we'd do just dry walkthroughs, nobody out there, of me calling a 2-minute drill, understanding situational football. He'd set up quizzes on fronts and adjustments to bunch stack. So I learned so much, excuse me, football from Josh McDaniels leading into that season. And I had the privilege of watching the best to ever do it, obviously, right there in front of me on a day-to-day basis. However, that season, when it all did happen, I think he understood me as a player, understood my likes and dislikes, because even though I wasn't the starter the day before the game, even as a backup, he'd say, what plays do you like? What third downs situation, red zone passes, where are you comfortable here, here? So he had his own list for me versus Brady might be something a little bit different based on his likes and dislikes in terms of the game plan. So he always gave me that confidence because he had this collaborative thought process of everybody's got to be involved and we got to develop these guys. And so when I took over that season, yes, there was adjustments that were made to the offense, particularly because I was a little bit more of an athlete, I'd say. No offense, Tommy, but let's be honest, I'm a better athlete than you. So more
Tell Brian
boots.
Urlacher that, right?
Yeah, that's right. He did get Urlacher. I think Urlacher thought he was going to slide, but then when he oked him, I was like, this is beautiful. Urlacher's never going to live that one down. Um,
But yes, you
but
were a better athlete.
so
All right.
some of the adaptations that we made to the offense where we had a few more move the pocket, some boots. And then also early on, I think the biggest part of early when I took over was getting me into a rhythm. So it wasn't overloading the game plan with too many dropbacks or this. We really honed in on what we really liked for that. But as the season took off and we got into game 3, game 4, it just started to build what we were prior to Brady going down. And in addition to that, it was like subtle adjustments. When I was in 2-minute drill, I really liked 3-by-1 to 3-by-1. We used to base it on 2-by-2 to 3-by-1, which means 2 wide receivers, 2 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers, 1 wide receiver based on hash. But I
Yeah.
just felt more comfortable. I saw the field better in 3-by-1. So immediately, without hesitation, when we went 2-minute drill, we are going 3-by-1 to 3-by-1. And so that was, it feels like a very easy adjustment. And it is, but not all coaches are willing to say, hey, this guy's have enough confidence in a young quarterback to say, hey, this is what he likes. This is what we're going to do.
So there's some concern, obviously that, Drake Maye, he learned kind of a West Coast type offense with Alex Van Pelt here.
Right.
And now having a new coordinator, conceivably with a new offense with Josh, new terminology. But I have to believe Josh is going to make it, I don't want to say as easy for him as possible, but adapt. I think Josh will adapt his offense more to suit Drake, kind
Right.
of based off what you're saying. Do you agree with that?
I do. And now terminology is a whole other thing because Josh, for his entirety of his career, has called offense one way, formationally, protection scheme, route concepts, run game. And so that is going to be the biggest adjustment for Drake Maye is to get caught up on terminology because it is a wordy offense. There's a lot of different motions, a lot of check with me's, but once you learn the foundation of the offense, and particularly the motions and how we call plays, zero out slot or the F shift is zero out slot alert thing, jab 130 cross X go alert samurai. That's just an example. It can get wordy, but when you put all of those things and start to compartmentalize those and understand it, it is a quarterback friendly offense. Josh McDaniels will put you in a position to be successful. When you're making checks at the line of scrimmage, a lot of times it's based on what the defense is showing you, whether it's rotation in the run game or man versus zone in the pass game. You get 2 plays in your helmet, but you always felt like you had the advantage because formationally, the way that we would set it up and then motion to another formation, it was something that would give us a tail of if it's man or zone. And now you have the best play against the best coverage that you're thinking they're going to play.
Mm. So you would say, like, I believe Drake's in good hands with Josh, and
Oh,
that,
100%.
once he does get the terminology down, eventually, this offense will be good for him and his skill set. I mean, he has a similar, he's a mobile guy,
Right.
great arm, but you see a fit for Drake in the McDaniels offense.
I really do. And it's hard to sit there and not look at his track record. I know he had Tom Brady for a majority of his tenure with the New England Patriots, but what he did with me, what he did with Jimmy Garoppolo, Jacoby Brissett, guys that have stepped in. Then even when you go out to Denver and Kyle Orton comes in, they win 6 straight to start the year. They're on fire, and then that kind of fizzled out later on. But everywhere he's been, And any quarterback that he's had, he's been able to develop success with that quarterback. He adapts his scheme. He understands the strengths and weaknesses, but he's also a master game planner. He understands the defensive side of the ball as good as any defensive coordinator out there. So when he's game planning and putting these adjustments in, you clearly understand why philosophically we're doing something.
Hmm. I'm guessing you got to watch Drake Maye a little bit, watching Patriots. Your initial impressions of him in his rookie year.
I thought he was outstanding this year. Obviously, um, when you look at the offense holistically, there's some issues in terms of offensive line, maybe wide receiver not really having a true alpha or true number one out there. But he was put in a difficult situation. And the thing that I admired most was his toughness, his grit. He would always be out there fighting. He'd make plays that you're going, whoo, that was, and then when he lets it rip, like you said, his physical attributes, his traits, when you watch him, you're sitting there and it just jumps off the screen at you. And you go, you've got to be excited about a guy like this because he's somebody that you can build this offense around. I don't think you have to go out and look for another guy and there's all these question marks, whether it's arm strength, whether it's physical ability. Now it's just about developing him within a scheme and surrounding him with the necessary personnel to let him be successful and let those talents shine.
You think Josh is like salivating, getting this this type of quarterback?
Oh, I mean, I would be. I would be. If I'm Josh, I'm so excited about this opportunity to come back. One, he lives in New England.
Mm.
Two, he gets this quarterback that helps get to mold and develop in a system that he knows is proven and can be successful. But when you look at his talent level, there's nothing that Josh can't it has to take off the table right now from watching him in year one. He can just continue to add as Drake can absorb that new offense.
Do you think, would you consider Josh kind of a tough coach? Or how would you characterize, him in that way? Is he, tough to a degree, nice guy, or how do you fit him in that uh, category?
So Josh, he is a great human, first and foremost. He's got a great family. I know them all well, and I've known Josh and kept in contact with him throughout. And every stop, every part along his journey, even after his last stop with the Raiders, I called him afterwards. We talked for 45 minutes. It's just one of those relationships that's been long lasting because of the type of person he is. In terms of a coach, when you're an offensive coordinator, you have to hold people accountable. You can't be the guy that goes up and buddy buddy with everybody. And so he's going to hold them accountable. He's going to be demanding. He's not going to let things slide. But at the same time, when you get into a more intimate setting, when you're with just the quarterback, say, for instance, same thing. He's going to coach you hard, and that's what you expect at the quarterback position because it's the most difficult one. If you start letting the little things go by and the minute details just get lost, then all of a sudden it becomes a bigger problem later on. So he's always harps on the details. But at the same time, it's more relational when you're in that type of setting because people really don't understand how much time quarterbacks and offensive coordinator, quarterback coach spend with each other. We're with each other all day, every day. Now we break out and go into team meeting and do the offensive meetings in sometimes mixed groups. But for the most part, we're together watching film, doing all that. So you have to have some kind of demeanor in which people are comfortable. If you're just, it becomes a really long season when you have a coach that just grinds on you day in and day out, and there's no social aspect of, kind of, I'm in your corner, I've got your back. And I think that's what Josh always, I appreciate about him was you always felt like he had your best interest and always had your back and would go to bat for you when he thought something went wrong, but you at the same time weren't the reason because of it.
Hmm. Yeah, you're joined at the hip, right? So like
Yeah.
all along pretty much. So um I want to kind of pick your brain a little bit based on your college football coverage. Um if you're the Patriots, obviously they have needs. So you pointed out receiver, offensive line. Who are some names we should be looking at, as potential draft picks or who, what they're picking number four.
They're
So
picking number four. So,
it could
you're
come
definitely.
early there. It could come early in the second round, but who are some of the, receivers that you see might be fits for Josh,
Right.
offensive tackles, anything you get.
Right. Well, I mean, from a receivers class, I wouldn't say that it has the same amount of depth, but Luther Burden out of Missouri is a really good player. He's big, he's physical, he's a true X. He's a guy that can play, has the ability to play inside, but he's really an outside guy with big playability. And the other guy that I really like in this draft is McMillan out of Arizona. This
Mm.
kid is explosive. He's twitchy, but again, a long rangy guy that can go up and compete for those 50-50 balls. That's something that I look at when you look at the wide receiver position for the Patriots. You need somebody to be able to take the top off the coverage, but also demand double teams at time. But what does that do? That opens up the ability to run the football, and at the same time for Josh McDaniels, and the intermediate passing game is an important aspect of what we do in that system. And that's what opens those things up. And then when they want to load the box and we're running the ball successfully, that's when the big plays happen. So guys like that, Emeka Buka is a great wide receiver out of Ohio State. I like him a lot. When you look at the tackle situation, out of LSU, really like this kid, Will Campbell. He's coming out this year. He's been a guy that has been consistent. I think he's a 4-year starter, a guy that could step in right away. Um, he's got maturity. Kelvin Banks is another guy out of Texas, another left tackle who, again, started since he was a freshman. Really good character, big physical guy, and those are the type of guys that if you can get a premier bookend tackle, especially in the league that we play in today with all these guys on the outside and the speed and the power and all the different moves, but somebody that can hold down the fort on that opposite side and you don't have to constantly give help, that is a huge asset to any offense. We talk about that. And then I think the other position of serious need, I would say, is an edge rusher. And I think the premier edge rusher in this year's class is, you could probably go with Abdul Carter out of Penn State. He's a guy that played linebacker for his first few years in college. He was a Mike linebacker, and I went to a few of the practices last year and was on the sideline. I'm sitting there going, that guy's a Mike linebacker. He's massive. So he made the switch this year to defensive end, and he's explosive. He's a guy that his arsenal is still developing, but I would say a comparable is similar to him, like a Micah Parsons. He's a versatile athlete that you can play both on the rush on third down passing situations, but he's also can play off the line. He's got coverage ability. James Pierce out of Tennessee is another guy that I really like. He is one of those guys that just flashes when you turn on the film. He's got a lot of different array of movements and different ways to attack you. So those are some premier guys that when you look at that 4 spot, if you're thinking best available, then you might be thinking edge at that point. But the tackle situation is something that is a desperate need for this team right now, especially left tackle and wide receiver. But there's a good enough crop of all those guys out there right now that it would be interesting to see what direction the Patriots choose to go. Because free agency, with the cap number that they have, what do they have? 135 million or something like that.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. They can
Yeah.
take
So
a lot of needs so they can pick the best available, right? In the
right,
draft.
and they can pick best available, because you look at defensive end, for instance, and potential free agents. You got Khalil Mack, you got Sweat, you've got guys like that that can go out and be an impact player and add what Matt Judon did when he first came in. And so there's a lot of potential in the free agency market. You look at the wide receiver position. I mean, the guy that I think is going to be on everybody's radar and absolutely should be on the Patriots' radar, T. Higgins from Cincinnati. I mean, he is a number one in my eyes. There's no doubt about it. When you look at that Cincinnati Bengals team, they had 2 number ones, and T. Higgins is a dominant player in this league. He's proven it. He's a guy that deserves to be paid in that type of echelon of player.
If you draft Travis Hunter, where do you play him?
I believe that he translates most right now, in my opinion, to the cornerback position. I
Mm.
mean, I think you look at his skill set, he transitions well. He can play man defense. He's got great ball skills. I mean, and so when you come into the league, I would love to see him play both sides of the ball. I just think it would be a grind through a 17-game season to do what he did at Colorado. Now, I do think that he can have a role in which different packages and stuff like that he comes in on offense, but to say that you're going to cover the top wide receivers week in and week out and then have to turn around and play offense and go against these defenses that they have, that would be a tough haul. But I do see him translating more as a cornerback than I do as a wide receiver right now.
Did you get to see much of Jalen Polk in college? And, based on his rookie year, people are already giving up on him. I think it's a little early to give up. Do you have a take on him?
I always have. I mean, anytime you draft somebody and they don't perform right away, and people are like, "Oh, Jalen Polk, he's done. He's not the player that we thought." But
Mm.
you have to understand the most growth for any player is from year one to year two. And when you go into year two, now you kind of have an understanding of how this whole thing works. You think about that rookie year, and you go right from the end of the season, you go right into working out, then you go to the Senior Bowl, then you go right into combine, and it's a whirlwind. And then you got to go learn a new scheme and figure that whole thing out as well. So there's a lot that goes into it. But then you make that jump from year one to year two, and you understand what it takes to be a professional, to perform at a high level. The expectation level rises, obviously, from where you were in college. And so he's a guy that I really liked coming out in college at Washington. I think he's a guy that is got great potential. Confidence is a major issue, but that's something that you have to work on in the offseason. The coaches have to be aware of that, and they have to set up a regimen for him that this is where we need you to get, this is what you need to do, and this is how we're going to accomplish that. And that's something that only he can really focus on to be able to do it.
Mm. Well, they haven't filled the wide receiver coach yet. You want to come down? You want to come down and help?
Yeah, I'll coach wide receivers. I love wide receivers. I'm sure Welker's not with Miami anymore. I'm sure he's calling
I
right now,
know.
going, "Hey, I'm ready to roll." I
All
mean,
right.
he's been coaching two Pro Bowlers for the last 4 years, and then he was in the 49ers before. That would be an interesting reunion. I think I think Vrabel then would have to really say, "But we can't mess around like we used to mess around," because that was our group when we'd go out. So
Yeah, it's kind of haven't heard from Welker, but and there's also rumors that the Patriots are interested in Tyreek Hill, so that would be really really interesting.
that would be a very interesting, especially within the division and all that stuff. Because isn't he still under contract?
Yep, yeah, but
So
there was
they'd
some
have to
talk he wanted out
yes, of course.
in
There was one
Miami.
out, the frustration sets in, and somebody,
Right.
hey, he's not one of those players that's going to hold any punches. He's going to let you know how he feels. So, I mean, tremendous player. Um, but it would be really fascinating if Miami Dolphins would trade with one within the division. But
I
what would it
know.
take to get a guy like Tyreek Hill within the division? It's going to take probably two first rounders, which I don't know if they're willing to do that.
Probably not. But anyway,
No.
before we go, I know you have your LA hat on. I know you're from LA and you're trying to help support firefighters out there. I don't know if you had family members out there or whatever, but show your jersey there. Your
Oh yeah, we bought some shirts for the front line guys, Los Angeles Fire Department, got the LA rocking that. I mean, we had a lot of people impacted. Obviously, my family still lives out there, my wife's family,
Mm.
evacuations, homes burnt down, friends, some of the family members. And so it was a devastating, I mean, catastrophic in terms of wildfires and the Mother Nature itself with all the wins. And so you feel for those families and the recovery efforts that's going on right now. But the people that put their life on the line were able to go out there and fight those fires and save so many more homes than probably what probably would have burnt and been another disastrous situation for so many families. They were able to work as hard as they could around the clock. So I've got nothing but respect for them, and always big prayers and thoughts going out to those people of LA and anybody that had to go through that difficult situation of losing their home.
Mm. Well, I appreciate you taking the time for the Eye on Foxborough podcast. You can check out Matt on the Lots to Say podcast with Bobby Bones. And you know, I
Check us
think
out.
I think there's a lot of optimism around the Patriots, or a lot more this year. So we'll have to see how it plays out.
Yeah. I mean, that's the fun part right now. We get to talk about all these different personnel and coaches and everything else coming in, and there's a lot to go. But it should be a really interesting offseason, like we said, with the where they are in terms of spending money in free agency, where they're drafting, who's going to be available at that point. I mean, there's a lot of optimism because I think that they're in a great position to make great strides this year.
Great. Thanks again, Matt.
You got it, Karen. Have a great one.